If you have a question for one of our four panelists, I will ask you to come and look at me, and I will allow you to ask the question into the microphone. Don't try to take the microphone, you won't get it. I'm not looking for speeches, I'm looking for questions and respectful dialogue. So, we're there. Chris Ann will be back. If you have a question, we've got a question coming. Come on over here. I want you to tell me what your name is and where you're from, and state your question. Anyone has a question, line up right here, please. I'll hold the microphone. You missed that part.
Okay. My name is Chris McDonald. I'm from Medford, Oregon, and my question is, was it established that the Harney County Resource Center was indeed titled to the county? That was one of the questions that came up.
Okay, you still have your microphone up there? Who wants to answer that question? Kate.
I didn't even hear the question.
No, I know, but I'm sorry. I didn't ask you. That was my fault.
Everybody know that?
I don't think we have anybody that can really address that.
Anybody find that out?
What was the question again? What was the question again?
The question is, was the Harney County Resource Center indeed titled to the county?
No, it was
Okay.
I can answer that.
No,
It was
we'll discuss that one later. We need questions that pertain to these guests. You have a question?
I've been,
Name and where you're from, please.
my name's Carrie Matthews, I'm from Baker City, and I've been following the state of Jefferson, wanting to be the 51st state, and since Oregon is pretty much ruled by the west side, how would we be able to split off and become the 52nd state?
Is that for Chris Ann?
I also, how many of you heard of the state of Jefferson? Okay, so basically what you have to do, it sounds sort of counterintuitive, but you have to petition your capital to let you go. Or you can revolt and leave. Okay, but basically if you want to do legally within the realms of your constitution, then you will have to petition the capital to allow you to split. It's happened. Okay, we've had splits, we've had states become other states, and so it is possible to happen, but you have to. I believe that the state of Jefferson is in a very unique position to have a victory in that because of certain legal circumstances happening in California, which I won't get into details too, but that's how you do it.
Anybody
And good
else?
luck, I support you, because if you do it, then you make people think, right? Yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on that? Okay, next question.
Maggie Rose McGrath. My question is kind of a legal question, is if the federal judges up in Portland or in Las Vegas are deciding to disregard the Constitution, and they're basically telling the people, the defendants, that they cannot present certain evidence, and they're telling the jury to disregard some actual evidence that could clear their names, what can the people, or we the people, do to make sure we hold them accountable in the court of law, if it is a court of law?
I can start from the federal level. You should be demanding that your congressmen file articles of impeachment on these justices immediately. They should be impeaching them for bad behavior because they have the authority to do that.
Like Peter DeFazio, I don't think he would do that.
Okay, well, but you have to contact him and make him do it, and when he doesn't, then you publicize that he won't. And everybody in this room probably has a different representative, so you go to them as well.
Garrett?
Thank you, Chris Ann. Yeah, I think just as what Chris Ann's saying, you know, that's the legal way to go about it, but there's power in the word. And so if you can spread the word, if you can use social media, that has become a big thing. You'd be surprised at how many things are changing because of the internet. you know, this whole situation with Lavoie, it would have been presented a lot differently had there not been cameras and media and people being involved. If it had happened before technology was available, then they would have said that, yeah, they would have said, oh, well, Lavoie was shooting at us and we had to take him down. Well, once we have all this technology, once we have this ability to spread and to not be silenced, you know, we need to use it to the best of our ability.
How many of you knew that on Kellogg Community College, a federally funded college, that students were arrested and spent a night in jail for passing out pocket constitutions on campus? Okay, so what he said, you know what we did? We started a campaign to flood the president of that college's office with pocket constitutions. So, I mean, these are the ways. I was saying the legal way, but you know what's even more fun is to annoy the mess out of them, right? Shut down their phones, fill up their post boxes with pocket constitutions, do whatever you can, because sometimes it's a lot more fun to just be annoying.
Annoy the mess is one word for it. Yes, sir.
Hey, Trent, can I make one quick comment here? You know, KrisAnne talks about a revolution of the mind. One thing with these justices, Supreme Court justices, federal court justices, when you ask anybody how long is the term of office for Supreme Court justice, they'll tell you it's life. That does not exist in the Constitution. They are able to serve for good behavior. That's it. And so just that mental change makes a big difference. When we think they're in there for life, we think they're superior. When we recognize it's good behavior, they're a bunch of children that we're allowing to play in a little playpen as long as they have good behavior. Bad behavior, they're out. So it's that revolution of the mind. I love that KrisAnne uses that.
Next question.
My name is Scott Baird from Benicia, California. And by the way, I sent on Thursday Mark McConnell of Kellogg University, I sent him 10 pocket constitutions.
I have a question.
I do. Chad Davis, investigator for Lavoie's death, he refers to Lavoie as a militia member. How can he be to claim to be so independent if he's claiming Lavoie is a militia member? How do you get to be a militia member other than the narrative of the media? How can he call him that?
Who wants to answer that question?
Media. Fake news right there.
Katie?
Yeah, I was saying fake news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fake news calling fake news. I mean, all they have to do is say it. They don't ever retract it. And if they do retract it, it's on the last page in a little blip on the back side of the paper. And that's what's so sad about it, is they can spin that information for so long. Look how long they took the exact same story, the exact same verbiage about the protesters, right? Armed, standoff, all of the...
It seems to be a good item to use. Why don't anybody use that in the explanation of what the intent of the real Congress was?
In regards to the BLM, my first hurdle was just getting them to recognize that I was the legal heir to that property after my husband was killed. They didn't want to recognize Arizona state community property laws. And so that was my first hurdle. They still don't want to recognize me. They don't want to apply their own rule of law. And they don't want me to use anything that would benefit me. So you're right. This has to go all the way. We cannot stop. And I know that my family is very committed, because I felt that if, excuse me, I didn't stand and fight back this, that it would be worse for the next person in line.
KrisAnne.
Well, this class was not a class on the limitations of the federal government's ownership of land. I have a class on that, and so that's where that would be applicable. This was merely establishing the foundation of understanding what are the states, how was the federal government created, and what are the obligations of the state to keep the federal government limited. So, and basically this was a 90-minute class, and I only gave you 50 minutes of it. So there's the other thing. The other thing we want to talk about here is, I don't know, this is not happening just in Oregon. How many of you heard about what's happening in Texas on the Red River? Well, in the Red River, the BLM has not, it's quite ironic, they're very hypocritical, right? So Jeanette does doesn't have inheritance rights, according to them. However, in Red River, the BLM is asserting that they have inheritance rights to land superior to the heirs to the estates. So that's, here you go. When you have a people who believe that you are the ultimate arbiter of your own power, then you can just operate like you have no limits. Because who's going to tell you you're wrong?
Next question. I'll hold the mic.
Sorry, I'm not going to touch you. Anyway, I just wanted to say what you guys were talking about when we were talking about Anna Brown.
Your name and where you're from,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm Luana Elliott, and I am from Portland, Oregon. I'm part of the Portland, Oregon team. Anyway, we've already done that. We've gone to the state. We've petitioned to have her disbarred, and it's just on deaf ears. But what my question, I just was asked to comment on that and see if you could maybe comment later. But my question is, what has really bothered me about the whole court system, sitting in there and listening to Judge Brown, and realizing what really bothers me about the judicial system, is they can't make decisions based on the laws. What they do is they take each case and then they want to know examples of past cases and past rulings, and it's frustrating because I sit there and say, can't you make a decision? Are you that stupid that, I mean, what did you learn in law school? That you can't stick to the laws and the rules and rule according to what the laws are? Why do you have to have examples?
Okay, so Chris Ann alluded to this earlier as well, but in law school, when you take a constitutional law class, you don't read the Constitution, you don't read the law, you just read what other like Supreme Court justices or other courts say the law is, and they always use example. And so now we're not governed by constitutional law, but case law and precedent, and so that's why they do that, and that's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to, you know, look at it in view of the Constitution and then do what upholds the constitutional principles.
They're not doing that.
They're not doing that, but that's why, is because all attorneys are trained in case law, not constitutional law.
The interesting thing is I teach 700 years of history prior to the Constitution, and 700 years of history proves that the first mechanism of all tyrannical government is the corruption of the court system, which is why Jefferson said what he said. And we're coming to this conclusion like it's some kind of brand new wheel we've invented when we should have been looking out for it all the time. It was always the courts that would be the end of our republic.
Next question.
I'm Jenna Brown from Arnold, California, and I've read that President Trump couldn't pardon the Hammonds even if he wanted to, because the laws of pardons is that the person had to have been sentenced to at least 7 years and has to have had served 3/4 of that 7 years to be pardoned. Is that correct?
Yeah, she said, she heard that somebody said Donald Trump couldn't pardon the Hammonds because you have to be sentenced to more than 7 years and you have to serve like 3/4 of the sentence. I missed that article, section, and clause, so if somebody wants to show me that in the Constitution, I would be interested in seeing that. It's possible that they've created some kind of legislation or some kind of procedure, but then again, it's not constitutional anyway. And if you'll remember, they were talking about Donald Trump pardoning Hillary Clinton before she even was found guilty of anything. So I think that's just an excuse somebody who didn't know any better told you.
Bill.
The pardon power is a very fascinating power, and the Constitution doesn't talk much about it because it needs to be completely free and open in order for the power to really exist. Basically what the pardon power is, it's the power for mercy to satisfy the demands of justice. And it's a very fascinating power, because if we look at our religious doctrines, we have an individual that came to this earth that satisfied the demands of justice with mercy. It's that same power, so it has to be completely free and unbound. You can't have any restrictions. Otherwise, that ability for mercy to overcome justice just doesn't exist.
You know what the headline is in the news now tomorrow, Bill? Panel member just compares Donald Trump to Jesus. That's what you just said. All right. Next question. Oh, by the way, 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning on those two baskets. baskets of LaVoy's favorite items. If you want to bid on those, you have 2 minutes. Yes, sir.
My name's Tim Davis. I'm from Carrollton, Georgia, living out of Springfield, Oregon. My question's a little bit different than anything we've addressed tonight. I want to know why nobody's touching on the fact that the federal government has been arming and funding the Muslim armies all over this world for years. $4 billion, $50 million they gave just a few short months ago to Hamas. The federal government is the #1 reason that ISIS grew in the strength that they did and slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East. I don't understand why not very many Americans are addressing this. That's treason.
You need to come to my genealogy of the Constitution class, and you'll understand why then. This is just the mechanism of government. It's the way they've always operated. And other than, it sounds sort of trite, but it's actually true. It's just a common mechanism of the government to make deals with the enemies so that they can keep their own people under control.
I had a guest. I have about 400 guests a year, and a lot of my guests were whistleblowers. One named Eva Bartlett is a journalist, and I had her on my show, and she spent a lot of time down in Syria and talks about ISIS and the truth about what's going on in Syria, and it blew people's minds. And if you go to KateDalleyRadio.com, you can get all the podcasts, and that podcast is extraordinary because of the lies we're told in our press about Syria and who those white helmets are. I encourage you to go.
I encourage you to go. I also want to know how many people out there know that we created Al-Qaeda. Okay, so same old thing.
Okay, next question.
I'm Roxana Ryan. I'm the mother of one of the defendants that's up for the next trials. And my question is, I've got a couple. One, would a class lawsuit, if all the defendants got together and did a class action lawsuit against Judge Anna Brown, would that be effective? And number two, I am concerned Judge Anna Brown has denied these guys jury trial on the misdemeanor charges that they have added to the list of charges. And what can we do? Because according to the lawyers, there's nothing we can do.
I'll do the misdemeanor thing first. Here's the problem. This is another one of those things the Supreme Court said so, right? Which is directly in conflict with the Sixth Amendment. Because the Sixth Amendment says in all criminal, right? In all. All means all. And what happened is the Supreme Court said, well, all doesn't mean all. All actually means you're going to spend more than a year in jail and you're going to have more than a $500 fine. And so what they say is because you're not going to spend more than a year in jail and you're not going to have to pay more than a $500 fine and a petty misdemeanor, then you don't get to have a trial by jury. But that, again, is another place where the Supreme Court is in direct contradiction with the Constitution of the United States. And that's not going to change until, once again, the mentality of the people change and we demand that we don't have judges that do that. So who wants to handle the class action thing? Because I am anti-litigious. You know?
So the Supreme Court has also established a lot of rules on how you can maintain a class action. I'm not familiar with the case law off the top of my head, but you have to have certain things that has to be immediate harm, so they have, you just have to do a little research or get someone to do a little research to see what would be required with that. Other than that, we're still working under a case law driven judiciary, and so that's really how you have to play the game.
Next question. And we're going to have 5 more questions, and that'll be it.
My name is Clint Signer. I'm from Star, Idaho, and Chris and you were just talking about nullification, and that's a prerogative of the states. But the people in Eastern Oregon are in a tough spot. Their state capital has, zero chance they're ever going to try nullification there. So I'm wondering if there's any legal precedent for people just form groups or counties, smaller groups to try and nullify laws, or if you have to do that through the state.
Oregon is nullifying federal law. You realize that, don't you? Oregon is nullifying federal law by legalizing marijuana. So here's the thing. What we need to do is make sure that we bring these understandings of liberty to both sides of the aisle. In Washington State, there's a great legislator. His name is Matt Shea. And Matt Shea started off by just having liberty legislation. And he has learned over 7 years that if you present the issue as liberty and not as party, that you can get both sides on board. Because here's the thing. Oregonians need to help convince their liberal side that they want to have state authority. And the way you do that is you say, look, if you have the authority and the federal government doesn't, then that gives you the power to be the nanny and not the federal government. That means you get more money to be more nanny and you get control. And that resonates with them. And on the conservative side, you say to them, look, you can, because they're supposed to be the liberty side, you can depart more liberty to the people. And then what happens is you get the debate happening where it's supposed to be happening, at the state level. And so whether you want to be liberty or nanny is not something decided upon you by the federal government, but is decided by the people through their legislators. And so, and again, you have to do it here. And I think just throwing up our hands and saying, well, they'll never do it, so what do we need to do? You can change your life with one sheriff. Okay? One sheriff will change your entire life, how things work. If there had been, and it's no lie, if there had been a constitutional sheriff, these men would have never gone to jail, period. I mean, look at Brad Rogers in Elkhart, Indiana. Yep. He kicked the FDA and the USDA out of his entire county. And that's the power of the sheriff. And the power of the people is even greater. Because what would have happened if everybody went to the refuge and said, no, you can't exercise jurisdiction over these people? What if everybody showed up at the courthouse or prevented their arrest and said, no, you cannot exercise jurisdiction over the people? That is not an unprecedented act. Our states came together during the Civil War and refused to enforce the Federal Fugitive Slave Act and kicked the federal government out of their states and said, no, you don't have jurisdiction over these people. They are free here.
Okay, here are the 3 people who have won the silent auction. You can go pick up your items. Get to know the man, Kristen Thomas. Prineville, that's yours. For a mere $130. David Byrne, Norris, Montana. $200 for Get to Know the Man, the other one. And the Rattlesnake donated. Mike Perino, you have won that for $455, and that was a donation today. So thank you to those individuals. You can go pick that up. All right, I got just a couple more questions. You're up, sir. I'll hold the mic.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Lane. I'm from Grayland, Washington. And I'd like to start off by thanking all the people that came here today and that came to the town hall meetings in Burns. We filled the fairgrounds in Burns, we filled the high school, and we filled the stadium. The people are hungry for what we're doing here today. But what I'd like to point out is we can't fix the problem without identifying the problem. We need to identify the problem. And the problem is we need to follow the money. Who's making money off from stealing your life, liberty, and property? Attorneys are making money off of stealing your life, liberty, and property. And it's the violation of the separation of powers that is causing the problem. We have attorneys in the legislative branch and the executive branch, and they're making laws to benefit attorneys to steal your life, liberty, and property. And until we address the violation of separation of powers and throw the attorneys out of the legislatures and the executive branches, there's going to be more laws made to take your life, liberty, and property. Now, I'd like to address a question to our attorney up here.
We have 2.
Okay, they understand that the Supreme Court has ruled it is criminal to violate the separation of powers.
The Supreme Court doesn't issue rulings, they issue opinions.
Okay, opinions. But now the attorneys that are sitting there, and they understand it's criminal to violate the separation of powers, but they will not stand up
So
and
what is
point
your
out
what
to
is your
their
question?
Need a question.
Will you stand up to your legislators and your executive branches and say, will you not act in omission? Will you stand up and say it is a criminal act for all the legislatures to violate the separation of powers, and you're in treason when you're doing it?
Are you asking me personally? Because I'm pretty sure I do that every single day when I teach every class that I teach.
Teaches legislators.
Okay, to tell you the truth, I probably...
Name, address.
Sorry, address. Officer.
You got to get on the list properly.
Robert Jones, I'm from Nampa, Idaho. And I'd probably like to ask you guys 1,000 questions, but I'm trying to peacefully resist the best that I can, and I've been arrested for doing so. I'm actually fighting a case right now. But what I have a hard time with is when you get these public pretenders, they come in and they always want you to plea bargain, and they won't submit the motions that I want them to submit. They just, oh, that's not going to work. That's constitutional crap. Really, and I can't get them to do it, so I'm trying to do it myself, but I got to tell you, it's really hard. I type really slow. I don't know how to spell. Is there any resource that once you've begun that fight, and you know they've come after you, because actually this is like my 3rd time in these courts, and usually it gets brought down to like next to nothing, and you know the judge is the jury, so they find me guilty. The other one I did get, I took a plea bargain.
I think what we need, what my best advice to you was to pick your battles wisely and find an avenue where you can have pro se counsel. There are lots of First Amendment law firms out there. You've got the Thomas More, you've got Liberty Counsel, you've got ADF, and so stick in the constitutional realm, not knowing what your cases are all about. We don't have time to get into that. It's difficult to give very specific advice on that. You always have the right to be pro se, to represent yourself, but we do have to recognize that the system is rigged so that everybody's on the same team. So think about this. You have the legislators who are making the laws, their government, right? Then you have the people who are enforcing the laws, they're paid by the government too. Then you have the people who are prosecuting the laws, they're paid by the government too. You have the judge who's sitting on the bench, he's paid by the government too. And if you can't afford an attorney, you're going to have a public defender that is going to be working for you that's paid by the government too. So that's why we have the jury trial system, because in a system where everybody's on the same team, your only real check and balance is a jury.
Garrett, anything to add? Okay, thank you. Next, I'll hold the microphone.
I'm Tom Lewis, Albany, Oregon, and this county has a sheriff who is a constitutional sheriff, yet there are still a large number of federal lands in this county, such as the National Forest and the John Day fossil beds. How much power does a sheriff have to evict the federal government from the federal lands in a county such as this?
The sheriff has as much power as the people will support him to exercise.
And don't grab that microphone.
Don't grab the microphone. So, do you realize...
I'm going to let everybody know you are.
I'm me. I reside
Who are you?
Here.
That's Jason.
Who do you say I am?
Name.
Who do you say I am?
Oh, come on.
My name is me.
Okay, let's get to a question, please.
Okay. So do you realize that currently on the 14th in the trial that's happening now, what they're basically doing is creating case law where they try misdemeanors without a jury and then execute criminal forfeiture based on their decision. And the way that affects Oregon the most, considering they've nullified federal enforcement with marijuana laws, they can then charge you with a federal misdemeanor of possession or whatever of marijuana, and then do a civil forfeiture on you just based on their own ruling. And they're creating that case law right now in the current trial.
True. What was the question?
Well, the question was, did you know that?
Yes.
The second question is, what would you recommend the state of Oregon or even the people in this room do to stop that?
Same things that we've talked about before. It really is a stacked deck, and they stack the deck in the favor of the player who holds all the cards. So the only way to do it is get the people involved. It's use social media, whatever it is, flood the courtroom, and flood the courtroom.
I didn't quite hear you.
Flood the courtroom.
The best way to remedy is do what?
Get a lot of people involved. Next question.
And we were talking up here, one of the things that we need to understand that impeachment doesn't even have to be successful. The threat of impeachment is a very good tool as well. Problem is we have some people who run around and say, why impeach if we can't be successful? Well, if you never even try, then there is no threat.
So Thomas Jefferson, he talks about the involvement of the people. He said if the people are involved, he said even if they're wrong, even if the people are in error about a particular issue, just their involvement will have the effect of keeping the government within its original principles. And so just our involvement and engagement can have some success, even if we're way off on the issue, even if we're just loony cases about whatever. Our involvement will have an effect and can have a positive effect, according to Jefferson.
Hi, Rachel Bazzetti from Elko, Nevada. Jeanette, God bless you. Thank you for doing this, being here. Thank you to all of you for speaking. Very interesting, great to listen to. Kate, how do we hear your radio show in Elko, Nevada? Trent Luce is on there.
Sure, I know that was a bit confusing too. I have a live 3-hour show every single day. KrisAnne Hall is a guest every single Wednesday. I get that blessed. Yeah, she's amazing. So I have 9 different co-hosts that join me with all different ideologies. The conversations are lively. You can go to katedalleyradio.com and you can listen to so many of the shows that are posted. Also, you can live stream at foxnews1450.com. I am a Fox News affiliate. I'm the only one in that region. And so it's on foxnews1450.com to stream the show. You can do it on the TuneIn app. It's 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock every single day. And also, it's in Chicago, Tampa, Denver, Miami, and Salt Lake. And 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock Mountain. And then I'm also in Central. And then I'm also in Eastern live. So all those, and I'm on satellite. So if you don't have my show at your local station, just call them. And it's really easy. If they hear from you, they will actually do the show. They'll put the show on because it's on satellite. So it's really easy. And I really appreciate that question. Thank you.
Robert Finicum. Robert.
Hi.
She's on the Blaze Radio too on Saturdays.
I enjoyed this evening. My question is, I live in Flathead.
Your name?
My name is Nicholas Ramwell. I live in Flathead County, Montana. And I heard a lot about nullification. What am I supposed to take from this presentation back to Flathead County and do tomorrow to improve the lives of the people that are there? There's 93% of the lands in Flathead County are public lands.
Well, if I can just start, the best thing you can do is take back the education that you learned and start sharing it with other people. Education is the only real means of liberation, and most of the people I see don't realize that they have something that they can do because they don't even know there's something they can do. And you've learned here today not only what's wrong, but there are things that you can do. There's lots of resources. The little boy's got books, I've got books, DVDs. There's lots of things that you can take home and help you train others and train yourself. Share on, if you're in social media, share it. Just start getting educated. Kate has radio shows. I have radio shows. There's all kinds of things that we can do to educate ourselves. And I love and I thank you for that, because that is my payment for being here today, knowing that you want to go back and start bringing this to your people. Why don't you organize a training session for Center for Self-Governance, or have me come to your community and train. A very wise man said to me one time, it's always somebody else's fight until you get punched in the eye. We just have to make people realize you've been punched in the eye for 150 years. It's time to stop.
Thank you.
I just want you guys to know that KrisAnne Hall travels the country at her own expense. I know she doesn't want me to say this, but she does. She funds her entire trip. She does, 250 of those a year. So you can imagine how many days out of the year she is gone. She funds it herself. She educates herself. I mean, she goes and educates people on her own. That is extraordinary to me. It's amazing. We need more people like this. I love it.
I would also say go and educate your sheriff. And if he's not willing to change, then run for sheriff yourself or elect someone who will change.
Bill, final word.
So education absolutely is the way to go. But the other thing to make sure that you're doing when you go and are getting educated is recognize your own human nature. Just like my daughter Lane talked about, we all have the human nature to either gravitate toward democracy, mob rule, or monarchy. And it's in us all. And so we have to train ourselves to get away from that in order to live in our republic. So that's really the best thing. Go get educated and recognize that we've got to put off the natural man and train ourselves to learn how to live in a liberty.
Jeanette?
Again, thank you for coming, and weren't they wonderful? Aren't they true educators of the principles of liberty? I am so grateful that they took the time to come and share this with you. And I'm grateful that you took the time to come and spend it with us. And God bless you all. And I think my son is right here.
Robert is right there. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just close with one little thought. 3 words that we started with today as a summary of what we just heard is the most important thing to take home. Because that's the question everybody has. What do we take home? We, the people. Thank those individuals for taking their time to come and join us to remind us that we have the power. That's where you applaud. Yeah, good.
Okay, everybody, we're going to pray.
Robert Finicum with your benediction.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be gathered here together as friends, as families, and as lovers of freedom. We are especially grateful for all those who have sacrificed their time and their resources to help support this. Father, we pray that we can take the spirit of liberty and of freedom that we felt within our hearts and to let that guide our lives and the choices that we make. Help us to spread this message of freedom for our families and for our posterity, and that we can make steps to heal this country. And as we do so, to act in love and in compassion, especially as we work with those that may not agree with us and who may mistreat us. And we are so thankful to have this opportunity to live in such a promised land, and bless us as we seek to keep this land holy and safe and free. And these things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Be safe. Thank you for coming.